People all over the galaxy think that humans are completely crazy when it comes to taking care of dangerous animals. Well, let me tell you about the time that trait saved a whole space station, caught a smuggling ring, and somehow got me promoted to head of interspecies childcare. Yes, that's a real job. My friends call me Captain Jack Roundhouse Jackie, and I'm currently the human diplomatic liaison on Space Station Omega 7, where I proudly keep the peace between 17 sapient species and make sure no one eats anyone else during trade negotiations. As a kindergarten teacher, you're like a mom, but your students are ambassadors who can vote on whether to destroy your planet. It was just another Tuesday morning. We still call it Tuesday even though we're in space because humans are stubborn like that. When station security called me with the kind of message that makes you wish you'd called in sick. Captain Roundhouse, we have a situation at Docking Bay 3. The Nexus predators are here now. If you've never seen a Nexus predator, imagine a velociraptor having a baby with a tiger. That baby would grow up and bench press a rhinoceros. They're 9 feet tall, have scales and enough teeth to kill a rhino. They're also surprisingly one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. It turns out that being an apex predator gives you a lot of free time to develop advanced physics when you don't have to worry about being eaten. Tell me they're not hungry, I said. Already speedwalking to the docking bay, the security officer's nervous laugh didn't help. They say they need to speak with you specifically about cubs. I stopped in the middle of my stride, which caused an embarrassed Globon to slither into a wall to avoid me. Sorry, Gary, I called out to the alien that looked like a slug before turning back to my comm. Did you just say that? Absolutely. There are 3 cubs, baby Nexus predators, and they're asking for help from humans. The docking bay doors hissed open to reveal a scene that would give most species nightmares. 2 adult Nexus predators, their scales shimmering with an obsidian rainbow pattern that made them look like oil slicks with teeth, stood next to 3 smaller versions of themselves. The cubs were about the size of adult tigers, which was both less and more scary than I thought it would be. Ambassador Kirk, the bigger of the adults, clicked her secondary jaw in place. I learned that what they were saying was their version of a polite greeting. Behind them, I could see other alien species pressed up against the observation windows, likely betting on how quickly I'd be eaten. The cubs were already play-fighting, using moves you'd see in professional wrestling, but with more teeth and real killing potential. "Ambassador!" I said, bowing slightly, because when something can eat you in one bite, you err on the side of politeness. What can humanity do for the Nexus Confederation today? Kay's mate, whose name I couldn't pronounce without, as the translation matrix looked for the right words, someone stepped forward and said, "We have an emergency summit regarding the Reliant trade dispute. All Nexus representatives are required. We need a babysitter." That's when I learned that even the scariest predators in known space trust humans with their children. Although, after what happened next, I'm still not sure if that says more about their intelligence or our stupidity. You know that feeling you get when you realize the universe is laughing at you? That's how I felt staring at 3 hyperactive Nexus cubs while their parents explained why humans were the best species for emergency babysitting. "Your kind has a remarkable history of raising dangerous offspring," Crack said as one of the cubs, they called him Kevin, who happened to dress in the exact same floating costume as my own while keeping the brain power for steady work. How come we couldn't reproduce him to make for a better babysitting, Crack? I knew exactly what she meant because I had studied the historical records. Humanity's reputation as the best species for emergency babysitting began about 30 years ago when a Drachnid queen had to attend an emergency diplomatic meeting during hatching season. And the only person who could help was a human zoologist who had spent his career rehabilitating Kodo dragons. With just a spray bottle, some laser pointers, and an endless supply of patience, that guy kept 40 baby drades alive and happy for 3 days. Meanwhile, Seek's mate was watching as I gently coe Kevin down using the universal language of bribery. Turns out Nexus cubs go crazy for synthesized salmon. Your species has that strange trait of treating all young as if they were your own. You mean we're suckers for anything baby-shaped? I muttered. Click, click, and snap, snap. Before they could start a game of who can headbutt the atmospheric regulator harder, the station AI chose that moment to remind everyone of my questionable qualifications. Pay attention, all species. Captain Roundhouse has treated 17 Venusian acid spitters, 1 clutch of magnetar worms, 4 quantum pythons, and 1 very angry house cat in the past. I winced. That cat was definitely the worst. My communit buzzed as my assistant Bob Safety, Manuel Thompson, finally responded to my emergency message. Bob earned his nickname by reading and memorizing every safety protocol ever written for the station, which might actually come in handy right now. Jackie Bob's voice had that special tone of someone who's already regretting getting out of bed. Please tell me we're not actually setting up an ad hoc daycare for Apex Editor Cubs, but I won't say that. I'll just say that we have some special guests coming to Recreation Module 7, and you might want to bring all the reinforced titanium toys from the diplomatic gift vault. The other species watched in horror as I started basic introductions. The cubs seemed to see me as some kind of interesting new climbing frame, and Kevin had already figured out how to use my shoulders as a launch pad for attacks on his siblings from above. Captain, a horrified Globan ambassador, oozed forward, shaking. Taking this into account, these are Nexus predators, and their cubs can bite through battleship-grade armor. Actually, I said this while scratching behind Kevin's ear plates in the exact spot that made his leg hit the floor. They can only bite through civilian-grade armor at this age, though, because they don't reach full jaw strength until adolescence. The silence was broken by the sound of several species quietly updating their threat assessment databases. CK made that clicking sound again, but this time I knew it was their way of saying approve. That's why we trust humans. Just put up with dangerous kids. You study them, understand them, and care for them. Even your information networks are full of humans rehabilitating what other species would call monsters. We call those videos cute animal videos, I said, while stopping Snap from testing the structural integrity of a nearby maintenance droid. It's kind of our thing. The cubs' parents spent the next 20 minutes giving me emergency contact information, food restrictions for almost everything that moves, and behavior rules to make sure they don't take apart important station infrastructure. Meanwhile, Bob arrived with enough reinforced toys to keep a door open. The summit was occupied by a battalion of predator cubs. Craig assured me that they would be gone in 6 hours, and that they had already been fed, so there should be no problems. I agreed and began planning containment strategies that wouldn't technically break any station safety protocols. Don't worry, Ambassador. I once kept a teething magnetar worm entertained with nothing but a magnetic b-ball bearing and some string. We'll be fine, he said. As the parents left, the cubs turned their full attention to exploring their new environment, and the humans, who had volunteered to be guardians. Bob leaned over and whispered, "You do remember that the magnetar worm incident." I sighed as I watched as all 3 cubs started what looked like a coordinated attempt to test every safety feature in the recreation module at the same time. But this time we're ready. What's the worst that could happen? The universe, always ready to answer philosophical questions in the most dramatic way possible, was already warming up its sense of irony. Let me tell you something about managing predator cubs. No matter how well you plan or how many safety protocols you follow, chaos finds a way. It's like Murphy's Law got together with When I Got Married and Had a Baby. My partner and I turned Recreation Module 7 into what we hoped would be a predator-proof playpen. We got all the reinforced equipment we could find, set up multiple redundant containment fields, and even made a ball pit out of decommissioned sensor spears. I kindly named this area Containment Zone Alpha in all official logs. Okay, Bob said, checking his datapad for the 73rd time. We've got emergency force field generators, backup power supplies, and 3 different types of there were environmental controls, and enough enrichment activities to keep a whole pack of cubs busy. He stopped to watch as Kevin systematically tested the structural integrity of every toy by trying to eat it. "We're still gonna die, aren't we?" I asked, throwing a reinforced play sphere that was precisely caught by Snap Snap. I was glad that these cubs saw us as friends instead of food. Nexus cubs are actually quite intelligent. They're like velociraptors crossed with border collies. Scary smart, but trainable if you keep them busy. Click, Click chose that moment to show off their intelligence by figuring out how to open the toy storage container we'd made to be cub-proof. The avalanche of titanium chew toys sounded like a percussion orchestra having a seizure. See what I did there? The first hour actually went surprisingly well. We set some basic rules like not eating the environmental controls or using humans as springboards. Kevin was especially disappointed by this one, and we didn't try to help the maintenance droids evolve through combat. To everyone's surprise, the cubs seemed to understand what the rules were. They just chose to see them as interesting challenges instead of watching as all 3 cubs worked together to make what looked like a siege engine out of playthings. Bob thought, "I'm starting to understand why their species gets to space so quickly. They have the perfect mix of intelligence, curiosity, and complete disregard for personal safety." I replied, noticing many similarities with humanity's own journey to the stars, though I don't think our ancestors were able to bite through titanium. The real challenge came during what I'll call the Great Snack Crisis, despite their parents' promises to feed them. As with human teenagers, cubs are always hungry, especially when there's important equipment nearby that shouldn't be chewed on. "No, Kevin," I said a dozen times, gently steering him away from a group of critical power conduits. "Those are spicy. They'll give you indigestion. Try this instead," I offered him, handing him a reinforced puzzle toy full of synthetic meat products. Kevin gave me what I think was the universal young predator expression for, "but the forbidden snack looks tastier before," or accepting the substitute, the fact that a creature, "I still can't believe that toys and treats could change starship hull plating." That's when Click Click and Snap Snap came up with a new game I call "Let's Give Humans Heart Attacks by Pretending to Fall Off High Places, then Catching Ourselves at the Last Second." They were surprisingly good at it. "They're testing us," Bob realized after his 3rd any cardiac event. "They're trying to figure out how we'll react to danger." I nodded as I watched the cubs perform acrobatic skills that would make Olympic gymnasts question their career choices. This is pretty normal behavior for social predator species. They're learning how do temporary caregivers deal with stress. Well, you've only checked the safety rules 42 times in the last hour, so I'd say we're doing better than expected. The cubs seemed to like our calm approach to their daredevilry. They started including us in their games, simpler versions, so they wouldn't accidentally kill the squishy humans. And they even started responding to basic commands, especially ones that involve treats. You know, Bob told us that as we watched all 3 cubs work together to solve a complex puzzle toy we made to keep them busy for hours, they solved it in 20 minutes. If anyone back on Earth could see us, you're probably going crazy if you play catch with baby aliens that could theoretically eat you. I agreed, throwing another toy for Click Click to catch, but the next best time to approach them was when they appeared, so we could study them day in and day out for weeks. But then again, humans tamed wolves by looking at a dangerous predator and thinking, "I bet that could be friend-shaped with enough patience and treats." That's when the station's lights flickered and everything went sideways as the artificial gravity hiccuped. Bob's eyes went wide as his datapad lit up with alerts. "Ah, Jackie, remember how you asked what the worst that could happen?" The red light, bathing everything, made the cubs look even more prehistoric than usual, and they were all staring at the now disabled containment field with the interest of someone who had just discovered a new game. Let me guess. I sighed and moved to intercept 3 very excited predator cubs. We were about to find out that there are times in life when you realize that your career choices have led you down a very strange path? For me, that moment was crawling through a maintenance tunnel with a bag of synthesized treats, trying to avoid station security and what looked like a very surprised captain. I asked my communit to please tell me you had your eyes on at least one of the smugglers, and he replied, monitoring the station's internal sensors from what's left of our command center, I have a theory about what they're doing. Pull up the station schematic on your datapad. I did this, and right away I understood what he meant. The Cubs weren't just flying around randomly. They were moving in a pattern that covered every major cargo route through the station, as if they were on the lookout for something. Or someone. They were following a scent. I realized the power fluctuation wasn't an accident. Could it, since it happened at the same time as a scheduled cargo run? It's not likely that the Cubs picked up on something we missed, but I heard a series of crashes and alarmed screams ahead of me, followed by the unique sound of Nexus Cubs playing their favorite game, Chase the Interesting Thing until it stops moving. I turned a corner just in time to see 3 very scared people in maintenance uniforms trying to figure out how to get out of a dead end, while 3 very excited Predator Cubs blocked their exit. Kevin, bless his predatory little heart, was doing that head tilt thing that all young hunters do when they're trying to decide if something is prey, friend, or enemy. The smugglers whispered to their friends, their vision is based on movement. I couldn't help myself. Actually, their vision is based on highly advanced optical organs that can process information faster than our best quantum computers. They're not moving because they're waiting to see what I want them to do. The smugglers turned around, which was the exact wrong thing to do. Click, click, and snap, snap, they were immediately pushed back into their corner with teamwork that would make a wolf pack proud. Try to sound more confident than I feel, I said. I want to explain why you needed to turn off station power during a diplomatic summit, and maybe what's in, if you're trying to hide something. The lead smuggler growled and reached slowly for something in his pocket. Stop your monsters, Kevin yelled, apparently offended by either the monster comment or the threatening movement. He then chose that moment to show why Nexus predators are thought to be the galaxy's top predators. He didn't attack. He just bit through the smuggler's pocket, ripping out the weapon and a big chunk of his uniform in one motion. Fun fact about Nexus Cubs, I said as the weapon fell to the ground. They're actually more controlled than adults. The smugglers finally showed some signs of wisdom when they raised their hands and said, okay, it's just some illegal tech we were hired to disrupt the summit. No one was supposed to get hurt. I then activated my communications unit security and said, yeah, we're going to need a team in Maintenance Tunnel 14 and bring treats. While we waited for security to arrive, I was amazed at how well the Cubs kept their guard positions. They had easily gone from being playful kids to effective predators and back again, showing why their species had evolved to rule their corner. Hopefully this can stay between us, the smuggler said. Clit clit responded with a growl that didn't need to be translated. Yeah, that's what I thought, said the smuggler. Bob's voice cracked over the comm. Security is almost there. How are our little law enforcement officers doing? I asked myself. I looked at the Cubs who had started playing. Who can look scarier while still keeping the smugglers contained? Let's just say they've earned an extra long play date with the magnetic ball launcher when this is over. And that's how 3 Nexus Cubs, 2 humans with questionable career choices and 1, the detailed station safety manual, found and stopped a plot to disrupt interstellar diplomacy. But it would be interesting to explain to the Cubs' parents how they ended up joining Station Security's 9 unit, which was quickly renamed the X9 unit for obvious reasons. At least we had video evidence of their good behavior. Even if most of it showed them damaging property, the hardest thing about babysitting apex predator Cubs isn't keeping them from eating important things. It's telling their parents why their precious children now want to be space cops, she said, her secondary jaw clicking in what I really hoped was amusement. Our cubs not only escaped containment but also caught criminals on the station, I replied. In our defense, while Kevin showed off his new security training by methodically searching Bob for treats, they showed great judgment and restraint. No one was eaten, hurt, or even seriously scared. I paused. The security footage played on the briefing room's main screen, showing 3 Nexus cubs doing a textbook containment maneuver that looked both scary and cute. As the ambassador tried to keep her cool while watching Click Click demonstrate perfect peroration, I would very much like to discuss establishing an official exchange program between our security forces and your younger citizens. C's mate made a sound that I knew meant deep consideration. You want to train our cubs as law enforcement, using humans as handlers. I suggested that you think of it as an internship, with lots of enrichment activities and some crime fighting. The cubs, sensing that they were the subject of conversation, lined up in front of the cubs when I brought it in. They listen to their parents and do their best, so they definitely deserve this reward. Their display play, even though they were covered in evidence from their earlier rampage through the station's maintenance tunnels, was surprisingly effective. Bob also said that they showed great discipline by finally getting Kevin to focus on a puzzle while they were on their security sweep. Did you know that they wrote down every maintenance violation they found during their chase? They have 15 pages of safety violations with location markers. I wasn't sure, but I think Kay looked proud. She said that while her friend pretended to be uncompromising when Station Director Chen walked in and saw 3 predator cubs practicing their new patrol techniques, he clearly rethought every decision he had made in his life up to that point. Captain Roundhouse asked her, with the calm that comes from realizing the universe is a complete mess. I have 17 different species demanding we establish a permanent child care facility for their more active offspring. Apparently, word of today's events has spread in our defense. Bob started to say something, but I cut him off. This is perfect, I told Cusk. Remember how you said that humans have a unique attitude towards snakes? We have them, and the unique aversion they have. People all over the galaxy know that humans can handle dangerous animals, so why not make it official? The station director's eye twitched a little as he heard this. You want to turn Omega-7 into an interstellar daycare? An elite educational facility specializing in the care and development of high-risk Xeno youth with optional security training? The Cubs chose that moment to show either perfect timing or an unsettling ability to understand political negotiations. Space Station Omega-7 became home to the Galactic Institute for Advanced Juvenile Development, or as the staff quickly started calling it, the Extreme Cubs Daycare. The smugglers were enjoying the diplomatic benefits, which CR thought would be significant. Many species would value such a service, and I added that it would give humanity a unique role in the galactic community, one that plays to our strengths of being both caring and completely crazy at the same time. 2 hours. 7 diplomatic calls and a hastily written treaty later, Space Station Omega-7 became home to the Galactic Institute for Advanced Juvenile Development. Station security were said to be very in favor of the plan, especially after learning that the Cubs' former captors would be visiting the security department. As Bob said, most species would think this is completely crazy, taking in the galaxy's most dangerous kids to teach them and play with them. I agreed, scratching Kevin behind his ear plates one last time before he left. But that's kind of humanity, isn't it? Looking at something scary and thinking, I can work with this. The Cubs had to leave with their parents. Parents left, but not before promising that we would have their training program ready when they got back. As they walked away, they made the exact head tilt that Nexus predators use to mark someone as part of their extended pack. Station Director Chen sighed heavily and looked at the screen. I'm going to need you to write up a lot of new safety protocols, he said. Bob grinned and pulled out his data. He had already started Section 1 on what to do when the Cubs figure out how to open their containment fields again. And that's how humanity found its place in the galactic community. Not through better technology, military might, or even diplomatic skill, but through our completely batshit crazy. The ability to look at the most dangerous creatures in the universe and say, "Who's a good boy you are?" It works every time. Even the Nexus Predators thought it was pretty cool, though they did suggest we work on our baby-proofing. Oh, well, there's always room for improvement when you're running the galaxy's most extreme daycare. That's all for now. I'm Captain Jack Roundhouse, and I'm off to plan enrichment activities for next week's class of Magnetar worm hatchlings. This time, we've probably strengthened the gravity generators. Nah,